Welcome to TaNaCh Talk. I am your host, William Hall, broadcasting live from Kingsland, Texas, USA, with another episode of Rabbi Stuart Federow's Judaism and Christianity, a contrast. Today we are going to be discussing chapter 3, possibly 4, but we're not sure yet. We'll see how that plays out. So, good news is we're getting chapter 3 knocked out. Basically, each show we go through for these chapter books, for the chapters in the book, we really won't know until we're halfway through it what the contents is. So I'll go back and edit titles if necessary. We're just going to try to give you as close to an hour as possible without overlapping. So, and also disclaimer, because I know you and I talked about this before. I mean, how long ago did you write this book, Rabbi?
Over 10 years.
10 years. I bet you've come across a lot of new juicy information since then.
Well, certainly more useful information, things that contribute to the basic concept of any given chapter. So today, especially, we're doing chapter 3, the Satan versus a devil. I've grown and learned, so I'll be adding it.
That's good. So you added information in there. That's perfect. Perfect. All right. Very good. Very good. So I'll let them, what we'll do is just going to pass this on along and let you take it away. Here we go. Rabbi Stuart Federow, ladies and gentlemen.
So the title to the chapter 3 is The Satan versus a Devil. Jews believe in the existence of the Satan, but we don't believe in the existence of the devil. You see, in Christianity, they use both words interchangeably, devil and Satan, but there's a difference in the concept between the two words. So you also have to remember that for Jews, anything that even remotely conflicts with the idea that God is one and God can't be divided into multiple parts where each part is separate and unequal to the other parts, anything that conflicts with what is pure monotheism, it's going to be rejected. And so the idea that there's a God in heaven above who fights against the God of the underworld over human souls, that's not monotheism. That's two gods. And other faiths, by the way, have the same duality. And in the book I mentioned, Greece, Zeus and Hades, Rome, Jupiter and Pluto, but I found others as well. So, for example, in Norse mythology, there's Odin versus Loki, and despite the movies, in the mythology, the function of Loki is like the function of the function of the devil. So, in Mesopotamia, it was Marduk and Tiamat, and in Zoroastrianism, which by the way still exists, is Ahura Mazda and Angra Mainyu, and I'm probably mispronouncing that last word. But of course, all of this is paralleled with Christianity because they have God and the devil. So Judaism and the Bible tells of a character called the Satan. Not always, but almost every time, it's talking about the character of the Satan. It's the Hebrew reads Ha-Satan, the Satan. But if you take a look at translations, they will just use the word Satan. So what's the difference between the Satan and Satan? If somebody says, "Oh, hi, Rabbi," well, the word Rabbi acts like a title. Start over. It acts like a name. Hi, Rabbi means my name is Rabbi. To them it is. But if somebody's talking about the Rabbi, now it's the title to a job. It's a job description. It's a title to a job. If I say, "Hi, Reverend," but if I say "the Reverend," that means it's the title to a job. The concept of the Satan is radically different from the idea of the devil. For Christians, the devil has power and authority in and of himself and fights against God over human souls. But if people actually pick up the Bible and read it for a change, the Satan only has power granted by God and has absolutely no authority and no will of his own. He does the will of God, and he's like a prosecuting attorney in the court of law. So, and by the way, in the Hebrew Scriptures, the Satan is only mentioned in a few places in the Hebrew Scriptures. And every instance, he's an angel who works for God. He doesn't work against God, and the Satan has to get permission from God for everything he does. Chronicles, Job, Psalms, and Zechariah are the only places in the Hebrew Scriptures where the Satan is even mentioned. Now, there are places where it'll talk about an entity. The verb is liston, has the same root as Satan. Okay, Satan is the individual who does this, the angel for God, but liston, soten, is to, or Satan, is a verb, and it means to, like to be an adversary against somebody or to act like an obstacle against somebody. But that doesn't mean that the entity, the character in the Hebrew scriptures that is acting as an adversary or acting as an obstacle is the Satan. The verb, okay, is liston or Satan, but the individual entity that does that as a career, as his job as an angel under God, which we'll talk about in a minute, is the Satan, ha-Satan. Okay, now, so if you take a look in the first quotation we're going to bring up, which is Job chapter 2, verse 3 through 6, okay, I want to emphasize who is doing the speaking. Keep that clear in your head, okay? Job chapter 2, verse 3 through 6, and the Eternal said unto the Satan, although translations usually just say to Satan, have you considered my servant Job, that there is none like him in the earth, a perfect and an upright man, one that fears God and eschews evil? But still he holds fast his integrity, although you, God is speaking, although you, the Satan, moved me, meaning God, against him, Job, to destroy him without cause. Verse 4, and the Satan answered the Eternal and said, skin for skin, yea, all that a man has will he give for his life. And remember, it's the Satan talking, but put forth thine hand, that's God's hand now, and touch his bone and his flesh, and he, Job, will curse thee, namely God, to God's face. And the Eternal said unto the Satan, behold, he is in your hand, but save his life. It's like a prosecuting attorney in a court of law, where the prosecuting attorney has to get permission from the judge to do a sting operation against other human beings to find out, are they really as honest as they say they are? And that's exactly what we have in the Bible in describing, what the Satan is supposed to do. Okay, the Satan obtains permission from God to act against Job, which is granted to him in verse 6. And the Satan has no power, no authority of his own. He's doing a job like a prosecuting attorney or district attorney in the American judicial system, and he gets permission from the judge, God, in everything he does. It's the Satan. And as a matter of fact, the biblical text paints the same picture of the Satan in what appears to be like the end of a Law and Order or something, like the end of a court scene. So in the following couple of quotations, the Satan stands in opposition to the accused, like a district attorney or prosecuting attorney stands at the end of a television court drama. The first angel of God mentioned below is like a defense attorney, but the Satan, his accuser, is like the district attorney or prosecutor. So take a look at Zechariah chapter 3, verse 1 through 2. Zechariah chapter 3, verse 1 through 2. And he showed me Joshua the high priest standing before the angel of the Eternal, and the Satan standing at his right hand to accuse him. And the Eternal said to Satan, the Eternal rebukes you, O Satan, even the Eternal that has chosen Jerusalem rebukes you. Is not this a brand plucked out of the fire? What is this talking about? What it's talking about, as I said, is like the end of a court scene. Joshua is the high priest. He's been in exile. Now it's time where maybe they'll go back and reestablish the temple. And the Satan is arguing against Joshua being allowed to go back to establish the temple again. And look at how it creates the image. Joshua the high priest is standing before the angel of the Eternal. That's the defense attorney. And the Satan is standing at his right hand to accuse him. That's the prosecuting attorney. And the Eternal is the judge who comes to, in verse 2, a conclusion. And the Eternal said unto the Satan, the Eternal rebukes you, O Satan, even the Eternal that has chosen Jerusalem rebukes you. Is not this a brand plucked out of the fire? What is brand plucked out of the fire? We tend to be very urbanized people, very cityfied, okay? But a brand, once you use it on an animal, like a cow, bluntly speaking, it gets some of the cow on the brand. And you put it back in the fire to heat it again and to purify it. So when God says to the Satan, siding for the defense, God takes the side of the defense God takes the side of Joshua, the high priest, and says that the high priest is like a brand plucked out of the fire. Going into exile has purified him. And now, yes, contrary to what the prosecuting attorney, the Satan, is saying, he is now capable of going back to the land of Israel, reestablishing the temple, and becoming the high priest there. And then take a look at Psalm 109, verses 6 through 7. Okay? Set thou a wicked man over him, and let the Satan stand at his right hand. When he shall be judged, let him be condemned, let his prayer become sin. So the wicked man is being judged, and the Satan is standing at his right hand, accusing him like we just had in Zechariah chapter 3. Okay? So, also take a look at one more thing, which is important to understand. Christianity doesn't like the idea that God has anything whatsoever to do with evil or bad or sin. They even think that God can't be in the presence of sin. Okay? But yet they'll say that Adam and Eve sinned. I'd debate that. But they'd say that Adam and Eve sinned, and after they are kicked out of the Garden of Eden, God doesn't talk to them anymore? Come on. Okay, but you also have, where does this idea of sin, where does evil come from? Isaiah 45, verses 5 through 7. Okay, Isaiah 45, verses 5 through 7. I am the eternal, there is none else, there is no God besides me. I girded you, though you did not know me, that they may know from the rising of the sun and from the west that there is none besides me. I am the eternal, there is none else. I form the light and create darkness. I make peace and create evil. I, the eternal, do all these things. Scholars believe that this is a hard contrast with Zoroastrianism that created the idea of a devil, okay, Ahura Mazda, the good god, and Angra Mainyu, I'm mispronouncing that, as the bad god, fighting against each other. And so God comes along, Isaiah 45, 5 through 7, I make peace and create evil, the one and only God states. So, and by the way, you'll see in popular culture, in movies all the time, the Christian idea that the devil competes with God over human souls. And there's another thing, that you're going to hear this phrase about, well, so-and-so sold their soul to the devil. Sold their soul to the devil? That's impossible. It's unbiblical. If God owns our souls, and God gives our souls only temporarily to us while we are alive on this earth, how can we sell what doesn't belong to us? So take a look at Ezekiel chapter 18, verse 4, often quoted in another context, but take a look at Ezekiel chapter 18, verse 4. Behold, all souls are mine. As the soul of the Father, so also the soul of the Son is mine. If all souls belong to God, you know, I have a great cell phone. Can you sell my cell phone to someone else? No, not legally. You don't own it. Well, I got news for you. You don't own, human beings do not own their soul. God still continues to own the soul. And what do we read about our death? What do we read in Ecclesiastes chapter 12, verse 7? Ecclesiastes chapter 12, verse 7. Then shall the dust return to the earth as it was, and the spirit, the soul, goes back to God who gave it. For God, for the Bible, for Judaism, we have an entity that competes with God, that has power and authority of his own. That's to have two gods. So for God, for the Bible, for Judaism, it violates the basic Jewish concept called monotheism. Okay? Some Christians will claim that the devil is not God, but is merely only a fallen angel, one who tried to overthrow God in heaven and who got kicked out of heaven, along with those in heaven who tried to follow the devil, and they became his demons. Okay? Doesn't that mean you have two gods? They'll say he's not a god, he's an angel, but that's still two gods. Okay, for a minute, let's pretend that it's only a fallen angel. Somebody explain to me how you can have evil and angel, and how can you have evil in heaven? How do you have evil in heaven? Okay, and by the way, there's a verse in the Hebrew scriptures that actually seems to reflect the Christian concept. So take a look at Isaiah chapter 14. Isaiah chapter 14. We'll begin with verse, excuse me. We'll begin with verse 12. But what does it say? How art you fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art you cut down to the ground, which did weaken the nations? For you have said in your heart, I will ascend unto heaven, I will exalt my throne above the stars of God, I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north, I will ascend above the heights of the clouds, I will be like the Most High. The problem with that quote that Christians bring to show this idea of a fallen angel is that they're not looking, as usual, to the whole quotation. Take a look not at Isaiah 14, 12 to 14, but look at Isaiah 14, beginning with verse 4. What does it say? It says that you shall take up this proverb against the king of Babylon and say, how has the oppressor ceased, the golden city ceased, and it goes on from there. The entire passage is a taunt against the king of Babylon for being once so great and wonderful, so exalted, but who was then brought low. And the verse likens him to a falling star. The verse in the translation uses the word Lucifer. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? Okay, but Lucifer is Latin for light bearer and was used to refer to the planet Venus in the early morning sky, and it was called the morning star. The verses also are saying that Venus, the morning star, announces the new day but dips below the horizon. As the sun rises, the morning star goes below the horizon. Okay, so they're likening this to the king of Babylon, who rose high but who falls from his place. Okay, and by the way, okay, think about it. Okay, if the morning star goes down below the horizon, when the sun on the other side of the horizon comes up, the dropping of the planet Venus, called Lucifer, the light bearer, the morning star, goes beneath the horizon. It looks like what? It looks like the star is going into the earth. Venus is going into the earth, kind of like to hell. That's where Christianity, one place where Christianity gets it. Now, let me tell you something else. Okay, there is a area of the Mideast. It's called the city is called Ugarit. It was also called Ras Shamra. It's on the Mediterranean coast of northern Syria. Okay, on the Mediterranean coast in northern Syria. And what they found was a huge number of texts buried in Ugaritic, which is a Semitic language, and they're in cuneiform. They were discovered in 1928 in Ugarit, which is also called Ras Shamra, and most of the time they're called the Ras Shamra texts. And in there, you have a very interesting, what's it called? Myth describing the Canaanite god of the underworld, the Canaanite god of the underworld. It's called the myth of Athtar, Athtar, Athtar. In the Ras Shamra text, it says the following: Then Athtar the awesome climbed Mount Zaphon, ascended the throne of Baal the Almighty, but his feet did not reach the footstool, his head did not touch the headrest. Then Athtar the awesome spoke, I cannot serve as king, I cannot dwell on the heights of Zaphon. So Athtar the awesome descended, stepped down from the throne of Baal the Almighty. He became king of the underworld, lord of the river of the dead. Sound familiar? That's where Christianity gets their idea of a devil, from the myth of Athtar. Like most things in Christian theology, they get it from paganism. So, all right. Okay, so there's another element here that we should talk about, all right? I want you to take a look at Luke chapter 4, verses 1 through 13. Luke chapter 4, verses 1 through 13. This is where Jesus is supposed to have been tempted by the devil. All right. It's just a very interesting thing when Christians claim that the devil is not a God. All right. And Jesus, being fully of the Holy Spirit, returned from Jordan and was led by the Spirit into the wilderness, being 40 days tempted of the devil. And in those days he did not eat anything. And when they were ended, he afterwards hungered. And the devil said unto him, If you are the Son of God, command this stone that it be made bread. And Jesus answered him, saying, It is written that man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word of God. Verse 5, and the devil, taking him up into a high mountain, showed him all the kingdoms of the world in a moment of time. And the devil said to him, All this power I will give you, and the glory of them, for that is delivered unto me, and to whomever I will give it. If thou therefore wilt worship me, all things will be yours. And Jesus answered and said to him, Get thee behind me, Satan, for it is written, You shall worship the Lord thy God, and him only shall you serve. And he brought him to Jerusalem and set him on a pinnacle of the temple and said unto him, this is the devil bringing Jesus onto the pinnacle of the temple, If you are the Son of God, cast yourself down from here, for it is written, He shall give his angels charge over you to keep you, and in their hands they shall bear you up, lest at any time you dash your foot against a stone. And Jesus answered and said to him, It is said, You shall not tempt the Lord your God. And when the devil had ended all the temptation, he departed from him for a season. If the devil is tempting Jesus, the devil doesn't recognize Jesus as being God. Why would the devil tempt God? Why would the devil say to Jesus, Hey, I will give you all these kingdoms? I could have sworn that the Bible says that the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. So if Jesus is God, wouldn't the devil try to tempt him with something he doesn't already own? Okay. Jesus quotes the Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 16, You shall not tempt the eternal your God to the devil. The devil was trying to tempt Jesus, implying, as I said, that the devil doesn't recognize Jesus as divine. But it also says that the devil showed to Jesus all the kingdoms of the world, claiming it was his power to give them to him. Only God has that kind of power to give the kingdoms to anybody. And that's how Paul refers to the devil. Take a look at 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 4. 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 4. And it reads, But if our gospel be hid, it is hid to them that are lost. Verse 4, in whom the God of this world has blinded the minds of those who do not believe, lest the light of the glorious gospel of Christ, who is the image of God, should shine unto them. What this is saying is that the influence of the devil prevents people from seeing the truth of Christianity and becoming Christian. But you've got to look at the Greek here. It talks about the devil, and it talks about the devil as the God of this world. And the word for God used in the Greek is theos. And if you take a look a sentence later, lest the light of the glorious gospel of Christ, who is the image of God, and for the word God there, once again, the text uses the word theos. So it's using the word theos for God, but it's also using the word theos for the God of this world, meaning the devil. So they're calling the devil a god. All right. By the way, if you're looking around, you'll see that another name for the devil in the Christian's New Testament is Baal-Zevuv, okay, Beelzebub. Okay, you get that in Matthew 12, Mark 3, Luke 11. In Hebrew, Beelzebub is Baal-Zevuv, and it means Lord of the Flies, hence the name of the book. Okay, and the term Lord is Baal, and it's used to refer to the devil just as the term Lord is used to refer to Jesus or to God. So Baal was the name of the ancient god in the ancient pagan world, which is the pagan god that Athtar tried to replace by sitting in his throne. So, all right. Repeatedly, okay, the Bible says that God is God and no one else can be God. and yet Christianity elevates the devil to being God and calls him that in Corinthians, and uses the devil to excuse the existence of evil when our Bible explicitly says it's God. And again and again and again, you have this in the Christian's New Testament where you've got two gods. You add that to the Trinity, you got four gods.
Exactly.
All right. Really, that's it.
Okay.
Do you everything.
Would you like to go ahead and toy around with chapter 4 now, or because we're only about a half hour in, or 25 minutes in right now? Do you think that would be something you want to do, or you want to keep it separate? Maybe better keep them all separated.
Yeah, okay. All right, let's keep it separate then.
Okay, that sounds good then. All right, well, very good. All right, well, thank you all for tuning in. Rabbi, thank you for your time.
And You're very welcome.
Look forward
I hope it proves meaningful for people.
Oh, I'm sure it will. In fact,
I had a little bit of information there that I didn't have under, in the book.
Very good. And so I'm going to keep you on for about 10 more seconds here. So you'll see at the bottom of the screen, Rabbi Stuart Federow is all of his contact information. Rabbi Stuart at hotmail.com. His book, Memory, there. So if you want to buy his book, whatjewsbelieve.org has that. They also have a great app thingy. Yeah, Spanish and English. And then also, you can contact him regarding his Hebrew teaching at HebrewJumpstart@gmail. Don't mix the two up. If you want to just ask regular questions, then Rabbi Stuart at Hotmail. If it's specifically Hebrew related, HebrewJumpstart@gmail.com. The video is online. I've been posting it a lot lately, so you can find that full 1 hour class.
Go to YouTube and do a search for Hebrew Jumpstart. It'll come up.
Absolutely. Very good. All right, Rabbi, thank you so much, and thank you all you kind folks for watching, and we'll see you guys on the other side. Shalom, everybody. Bye. Shalom, my dear friends. Hope this message finds you well. If you like the way this channel is going, and the channel has been a blessing to you, please consider supporting the channel by going to the website, TaNaChTalk.com, TaNachTalk.com. Thank you once again for your time and for supporting TaNaCh Talk. Shalom.